Earlier this week, we saw the NHL Draft Lottery, and obviously, usually this is an exciting night. There's a lot of fan base that are excited to see if they can snag the best prospect in this draft. But this one obviously also ended in disappointment because I feel like the entire hockey world was against the Chicago Blackhawks winning, rightfully so. It's a team that had internal issues, to say the least, and that purposely tanked this year with one of the worst lineups I have ever seen. Nonetheless, they won the lottery and they will get Connor Bedard and their team. It's honestly not a great look for Connor Bedard because if you look at this lineup, I'm not too sure who he's going to play with. Nonetheless, in this video, we'll focus on the mock draft here. We'll focus on the top 10 picks in this draft. It's a very good draft class. It's a stacked top 5. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So I took the past couple of days to analyze a lot of the prospect, watch a lot of footage, and kind of like landing spots that would make sense for them, that would fit with the organization. So obviously, I'll be wrong for most of this, but at least most of these picks make sense. So let's jump right into it. Not a lot of time to spend here on number 1, Connor Bedard. One of the best hockey prospect we've seen in a while. Is the total package as an elite release, and I guess it's a good start for a rebuild for Chicago. He was absolutely overpowered at the World Juniors, completely destroyed the WHL. Will play in the show next year. The question is who's going to be his landmates, because right now it doesn't look too good for Connor Bedard. Nonetheless, I think he can have about a 65, 70 point year as his first year in the show. Could be more, obviously, if he'd be surrounded with better talent. But for now, this is probably the expectation levels that I have for Connor Bedard. Now, at number 2 here, we have the Anaheim Ducks. Unfortunate for them that they lost the sweepstakes for Crosby and now the sweepstakes for Connor Bedard. But Adam Fantilli here is a wonderful second choice, if you ask me. He was basically on pace with the Eichel level of production in the NCAA. Is an elite center, has a high IQ, great playmaking abilities, and he should join a very, very nice core of young prospects in Anaheim. It was a bit disappointing at the World Juniors playing for Team Canada, but that was a very small sample size. Should be in NHL as soon as he gets signed, which should be this summer. And I'm very excited to see what he can do with this young core in Anaheim. At number 3, here we have the Columbus Blue Jackets selecting Leo Carlsson. Now, there is rumors out there that Columbus likes Will Smith. And as much as it could be true, I think they're a bit unfounded. So I do believe that Carlsson is the better pick here. As I do have Carlsson in a bit of a tier of his own here in this draft class, just because he should be closer to number 2 than to number 4, if you ask me. So passing on him here at number 3 should be very, very hard. He's very close of being NHL ready, at elite production in the SHL. He's a center that can play wing if need be, and I just feel like the fit in Columbus makes a lot of sense. It's a team that's been trying to get a number 1 center with the likes of Ken Johnson, Cole Sillinger, and we haven't seen it from these guys yet. So I think Leo Carlsson makes sense, as he's going to have a shot to maybe center that top line, and if it doesn't work out, he can always transition to the wing very easily. At number 4 here, we have the San Jose Sharks selecting Will Smith. Now, Will Smith has lead skills. If you take a weaker draft class, he should be in the top 3. Absolutely destroyed the USHL and the U18 US League. Big production at the U18 World Juniors as well. 20 points in 7 games. Obviously, there's a bit of a teardrop after Leo Carlsson here at 4, just because Will Smith might not be as NHL ready as some of the guys that we just mentioned in the top 3. But within 2 or 3 years, after maybe a year in Boston College, he should be able to join the Sharks and should be a very, very fun prospect to watch grow. Now here at number 5, we have the Montreal Canadiens, and this is where it gets a little, not necessarily spicy, but dicey, because there's been a lot of talks in the media over the past few days, few weeks, and the talks are only going to grow in the upcoming weeks leading up to the draft. Obviously, I'm talking about Mr. Michkov here. It's a talent that should be number 2 if he was playing anywhere else in North America, but because he has a contract till 2026 in the KHL, he might fall as far as number 5. Now, anywhere after 5 here would be a bit of a disgrace because the talent is just too pure to pass on him. Best U18 production in the KHL. And obviously, like, he's the kind of prospect that even if it takes 3 years for him to join, as soon as he joins, he will have a Panarin, a Kaprizov level of impact in a franchise. So it's worth every bit of the risk, especially when you consider that the guys we're going to mention, obviously after number 5 here, are very good prospect, but they might not be NHL ready as well. So if you have to wait for a prospect, might as well wait for Michkov. At number 6 here, we have Dalibor, Dvorsky, and I probably mispronounced his name, so I apologize to him and his family, but nonetheless, he's a very versatile forward that I've grown to like more and more in this draft. I have no doubt that he would blend super well with the Coyotes. It makes sense for them. He would usually complement a core of Keller, Cooley, Gunter, and Geeky very, very well. He's not the flashiest player in this draft, but he's very, very smart, does a lot of things well on the ice, and has a sneaky shot that could find a lot of success in the NHL, if you ask me. At number 7 here, we have the Flyers selecting Zach Benson. And honestly, Zach Benson, if you take a mock draft from way back in the day, or maybe in the first half of this year, some of obviously the top prospect analysts and scouts out there at Benson in their top 5. Now, I don't think he played it himself out of the top 5. I think it's more other guys playing themselves in the top 5, the likes of the Will Smith and Leo Carlsson. But Benson is nonetheless a great talent, and he's a very, very good center here that can have a decent impact in the show. The only thing that I will mention here, he is a bit on the undersized side of things, so obviously not so sure how fast he can adjust to the show, but we've seen that trend in the past slowly being destroyed, so I'm not too worried about Zach Benson. It might just be like a year or two before we see him make the jump and see what kind of impact he can have with the Flyers. Now at number 8 here, we have the Washington Capitals. And here is where I think we see the first defenseman go off the board. Obviously, we've seen a stacked pool of forward here so far, and there's some good defensemen in the draft. None are necessarily expected to go in the top 10, but I feel like David Reinbacher here should be the one that goes off the board first. He's a 6'2" right shot defenseman that does a lot of things well on the ice. And when you look at the Capitals, aging team in the league, they're going to have a lot of need at different positions, so it makes sense for them to start on the blue line, as it might take a bit longer for them to grow. You can learn from John Carlsson, and he's a great overall two-way demon with a bit of fine-tuning to do, but I have no doubt he will play in the NHL one day. He was just recently playing in the league where Austin Matthews played in his draft year as well, and he's had a decent success playing against men, so he could be closer to the NHL than what my people think. At number 9 here, we have Oliver Moore. Now, obviously, Detroit is a team that's known to make smart selection. Obviously, Yzerman has a track record speaking for itself. They have a good scouting team. So I feel like Oliver Moore could be a name that kind of like is on their radar. Again, Yzerman can always go off the board and surprise herself with a pick like we've seen with Sider in the past. Even Edvinsson was a bit of a reach. But nonetheless, those two have proven to be great selection. So I think Oliver Moore kind of makes sense for them. He's a prospect that needs a bit of a fine-tuning, but does a lot of very good things on the ice. He's not as flashy as the other prospect, but he's a very good two-way forward. And after playing for the University of Minnesota for, let's say, a year or two, I feel like he could transition himself into a top 9 role in the NHL and then eventually progress to a top 6 role. At number 10 here, we have the St. Louis Blues, and I have them selecting Ryan Leonard. Now, this prospect is a bit more raw, but he's very, very skilled forward who has tremendous success in the USHL this year. Very, very good production. Was good with the U18 squad that broke records in terms of production. He should go play for Boston College again for a year or two in the kind of the same boat as Moore. They both need a bit of a fine-tuning playing against men of obviously in the NCAA. But I'm very excited to see how his game can grow and continue to evolve, because he could be the hidden gem in this draft. This is it. This is our first top 10 mock draft here. We'll do more as we get a bit more of a feedback on some of the leagues, maybe on some of the reports of some of these journalists out there. But this is the first take at my top 10. Obviously, this is my own personal opinion. If you have yours, please make sure to comment down below. I'd love to interact with you guys, see where you guys are leaning. And we'll do a first full round mock draft as well in the upcoming weeks. I'm just watching a bit more footage and gathering a bit more information before releasing that. So thank you guys for watching. You have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.